The first scream did not come from the soldiers. It came from the child. John moved before he understood why. His body reacted faster than his thoughts, faster than fear, faster than the voice in his head screaming that humans were not supposed to be here. The blast tore through the stone archway in a storm of blue fire. Guards flew backward like broken dolls. Spears clattered across marble. John stepped into the gap. He felt the heat hit his back. He felt bone-shaking force. He did not feel regret. Behind him, small hands grabbed his coat. "Don't look," he said, not turning around. The child listened. That was the strangest part. John had been a dock mechanic 3 weeks ago. A nobody from a forgotten coastal city on Earth. Now he was standing inside a foreign palace, shielding the air of an alien throne with his own body. And he was about to die. The second blast struck harder. John dropped to one knee, breath exploding from his lungs. The stone beneath him cracked. He did not fall. Something warm spilled down his side. He did not check. He spread his arms wider instead. The soldiers noticed then. They froze. Every one of them. Not because of the explosion. Not because of the blood. Because of who stood at the end of the hall. Queen Alira had not moved when the attack began. She stood among her soldiers, silver and sapphire armor glowing under cold light. Her crown caught the blue fire and bent it into sharp reflections. Her long brown hair fell loose down her back, untouched by chaos. She looked young, too young to rule a starbound kingdom. Her eyes locked onto John. Not the enemy. Not the burning archway. Him. John felt it even without turning. That weight. That focus. The attackers were Krell raiders. Everyone knew that much. They came for children. For leverage. The palace defenses should have stopped them. They didn't. The child behind John whimpered once. John shifted, blocking the sound. His vision blurred at the edges. He remembered his sister back home. Her small fingers. The way she used to hide behind him during storms. He had promised her once that nothing would ever hurt her. He had lied. This time he would not. A third blast charged. John braced. It never came. Steel rang. Orders barked in sharp, musical tones. The queen raised one hand. Every soldier obeyed. The attackers were cut down with brutal speed. Not rage. Precision. When it was over, silence fell so fast it felt unreal. John stayed where he was. His knees finally gave out. Strong hands caught him before he hit the floor. He turned his head just enough to see silver armor inches from his face. Blue light reflected in polished metal. Queen Alira knelt. Queens were not supposed to kneel. Her soldiers shifted, uncertain. The child peeked around John's shoulder. "Mama," the child whispered. The word hit harder than any blast. Alira's jaw tightened. Her eyes never left John. "He did what my guard could not," she said softly. Her voice carried through the hall. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. John tried to speak. Only blood came. Alira removed one gauntlet and pressed her bare hand against his wound. Warmth spread. Not healing. Not yet. Acknowledgement. Her touch lingered longer than necessary. Too long. "You are human," she said. John managed a nod. "You did not know our customs," she continued. "You did not swear an oath." He swallowed. "No," he rasped. "I just stood." Something changed in her eyes. Not gratitude. Calculation. The child hugged John's arm. Would not let go. Illyra noticed. That was when the queen made her first move. "Carry him," she ordered her guards. "To my private chamber." Murmurs erupted. A human. Inside forbidden halls. Illyra stood, her crown catching the light like a blade. "Any who object," she said quietly, "may explain to the stars why my child lives." No one spoke. As John was lifted, his vision faded. The last thing he saw was the queen watching him not as a ruler, but as a woman who had just lost control of something far more dangerous than a battle. And far more permanent. John woke to silence that felt expensive. Not empty. Not peaceful. Controlled. The ceiling above him shimmered like frozen starlight. Thin silver lines ran through pale stone, glowing faintly with blue energy. The air smelled clean, sharp, and unfamiliar. He tried to move. Pain answered first. A low sound escaped his throat before he could stop it. "You are awake." The voice came from his left. "Calm. Female." John turned his head slowly. Queen Illyra stood near the window, her armor removed. She wore a simple dark robe instead, cinched at the waist with a sapphire clasp. Her hair was braided loosely over one shoulder. She looked younger without the armor. More dangerous, too. "Where am I?" John asked. His voice sounded wrong. Thin. Scraped raw. "My private healing chamber," Illyra said. "Few enter it, fewer leave unchanged." "That's comforting," John muttered. To his surprise, a corner of her mouth lifted. "You defied death today," she said. "Humor is allowed." John swallowed and looked down. Clean bandages wrapped his torso. Glowing symbols pulsed softly along the fabric. "Magic?" he asked. "Science," she corrected. "Older than your planet." "Figures." He pushed himself up slightly. Too fast. Pain flared again, sharp and deep. Illyra crossed the room in 2 steps and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not," she said. "That wound pierced muscle and nearly reached your lung." John froze. Her hand was warm. "Steady. You should be dead," she continued. "My physicians agree." "Yeah," John said. "I get that a lot." Her eyes flicked to his face. "You stepped between a Krell strike and my son," she said. "You did not hesitate." John closed his eyes. "He's okay." Illyra's fingers tightened. "He sleeps," she said. "He has not released the fabric of your coat." John blinked. "That seems inconvenient." "For the palace tailors," she agreed. "Not for me." She stepped back. John noticed then how the guards stood outside the chamber, visible through the open archway. All of them watched him. Not with hostility. With unease. "Why are they staring like that?" John asked. Illyra folded her hands behind her back. "Because you broke a rule older than this throne," she said. John frowned. "I didn't see a sign." "No non-bonded being may touch the royal bloodline in defense," she explained. "Only sworn guards, only kin. And if someone else does, they become significant." John let out a slow breath. "That sounds bad." "It is," she said. "For everyone." She walked to the window and looked out over the city. Floating towers glided between massive spires. Banners of blue and silver rippled in artificial wind. Far below, crowds gathered. "They already know," John said quietly. Illyra nodded. "They felt the shockwave," she said. "And the breach. And me." "Yes." John leaned back against the bed. "I didn't plan on becoming a political problem," he said. "I was just trying to keep a kid alive." Illyra turned. "That," she said softly, "is precisely the problem." She approached again and stopped at the edge of the bed. In our culture, she continued, a life saved at the cost of blood creates a bond. John stiffened. Like a favor. Like a chain, she said. Forged by choice. He met her gaze. I didn't choose anything, he said. I reacted. Elira studied him for a long moment. You reacted, she repeated. Without reward, without command. Her voice lowered. You laid your body between danger and my child. Xylan stretched. John felt something heavy settle in his chest. Not pain. Pressure. What happens now? He asked. Elira straightened. Now, she said, the High Council will demand your execution. John blinked. That escalated fast. They will call you a destabilizing element, she said. A symbol they did not authorize. And you, John asked. Elira hesitated. Just for a breath. I am their queen, she said. And a mother's. John nodded slowly. Those two don't always agree, he said. Her eyes softened. No, she admitted. They do not. A faint alarm chimed through the chamber. Elira exhaled. They are coming, she said. To see you. John tightened his jaw. Then let's not waste time, he said. If they're going to kill me, I'd like to sit up first. Elira surprised him by laughing. A real laugh. Quick. Unguarded. No, she said. They will not kill you. John raised an eyebrow. You sound confident. Elira leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for him. Because I will move first. Outside the chamber, the guards straightened. The High Council's footsteps echoed closer. And John realized, too late, that saving a child had placed him at the center of a queen's most dangerous game. The chamber door opened before John could finish a thought. 7 figures stepped inside, cloaked in the muted silver of the High Council. Each face carried a mask of authority, eyes sharp as star-forged steel. They did not greet him. They did not acknowledge the child sleeping safely in the corner. They only looked at him. John's heart hammered. Every instinct screamed to run, but the bed kept him tethered. Every movement hurt, every breath burned. Queen Elira stood beside him. Her robe swirled around her like liquid night. One hand rested lightly on his shoulder, not for comfort, but as a declaration. You will speak, the tallest counselor said, voice brittle as ice. Human, explain why you violated our laws, why you touched the royal bloodline, why you dared. I didn't dare anything, John interrupted, wincing as he leaned forward. I saw a kid about to die, I moved, that's it. The counselor's lips curled, a smile that never reached his eyes. You moved. You interfered with centuries of order. You acted without oath, without sanction. You brought your judgment into someone else's life. Elira cut in, sharp as a blade. Every counselor flinched under her gaze. And for that, human, you will answer to me first. John blinked. Her eyes, brown, warm, yet burning with authority, held no room for argument. He opened his mouth, then shut it. Somehow she had shifted the entire room with a single word. The counselors bristled but stayed silent. Elira gestured toward the window. Outside, the city watches. Every transmission will carry this moment. Every choice you make now is visible. You can either claim courage or cowardice. He already chose courage. Now it is our move. John's throat tightened. He felt the weight of her hand on his shoulder like a lifeline, or maybe a tether to a storm he didn't fully understand. The counselor's voice cut through the tension. Queen Elira, we demand justice. The human cannot remain, he threatens. Threatens, she repeated, voice low but heavy. The only threat here is your inability to protect the innocent. I do not remove him because he is human. I remove him because he is the only one who fulfilled what your laws failed to do. The chamber went silent. John's gaze flicked to the child, curled in blankets, safe. Relief washed over him, but it was fragile. It could break in a heartbeat. Illyra moved closer. "Human," she said softly just for him. "I will not let them take what you protected, but I need something from you first." "Name it," John said, wincing as he adjusted himself. Pain shot through his side, but he ignored it. "Trust me," she whispered, "even when it seems impossible." John's brows knitted. He wanted to argue, wanted to say, "I don't even know you." But he didn't. Her presence, her certainty, wrapped around him in a way that made fear tremble at the edges. The counselor stepped forward again, voice sharp. "Your Majesty, do not let personal sentiment override duty." Illyra's hand moved subtly, almost imperceptibly. The guards behind her straightened, weapons drawn not at John, but at the council. A subtle but deadly line had been drawn. "The human saved my son," she said, voice like ice sliding over steel. "That action places him under my protection. Anyone who challenges that will answer to me." A tension so thick it could be sliced with a sword filled the chamber. John felt it coil around him, dangerous and exhilarating. He realized in that instant that he wasn't just a mechanic or a stranger. He was a pawn in something enormous, something that could shift the balance of power in this entire world. The counselor's jaw tightened. "Queen, you cannot bend tradition for one human." "I can," Illyra said, calm but lethal. "And I will. Watch me." John swallowed hard. The queen, young, beautiful, and more terrifying than any battlefield he'd ever known, had just declared war against centuries of law for him. He wanted to speak, but words stuck in his throat. Instead, he nodded, the only gesture he could manage. Illyra's hand squeezed his shoulder, a subtle promise. "You survive this," she said. "Not because of luck, not because of chance, because I will move before the world can touch you." John glanced at her. The cool, strategic exterior of a queen was fading just slightly, revealing something else. Something personal, something dangerous, something he couldn't yet name. A sudden alarm echoed through the palace corridors. The counselors stiffened. "They are coming," Illyra said, her eyes narrowing. "Faster than I expected." John's stomach dropped. "More Krell." She shook her head. "Not them, our own." And in that instant, John realized he wasn't just fighting for survival. He was standing in the center of a storm where loyalty, power, and bloodlines collided. And Queen Illyra was not waiting for anyone else to make the first move. He had no choice but to follow her. The door burst open. Shadows moved fast, deliberate, and the first counselor lunged toward him. Illyra's sword sang in response. The game had begun, and John was already in check. The blade moved too fast to track. John barely had time to raise his arms before steel cut through the air where he had just been. Sparks flew as it clashed with Illyra's own weapon. The counselor stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock. Guards behind him faltered. John's heart thudded not from fear, but from awe. The queen fought like she was born with fire in her veins. Each strike precise, controlled, impossible to anticipate. Every movement screamed authority. "Get the child out," Illyra shouted over the ringing clash. John scrambled to lift the blankets around the sleeping boy, but the child's tiny hands clung to him like vines. The boy's eyes blinked open, frightened. John whispered soothingly, "It's okay, I'm right here." Illyra parried another attack and stepped closer to him. "Keep him safe," she barked. Then almost casually she spun and struck the counselor's weapon aside. Steel clattered to the floor. The chamber trembled with tension. John glanced at her, trying to find words, but there were none. Why protect me like this?" he managed, voice shaking. Illyra's gaze flicked toward him. "Because you saved him, because now you're part of this world whether you like it or not." The counselors regrouped, their faces pale but determined. "Your Majesty," one shouted, "you cannot defy the council, you cannot." "Watch me," Illyra interrupted, her tone a whip. "I am queen, and I will decide what happens in my palace." John felt a shiver run down his spine. He wanted to argue, wanted to say he was just a mechanic, a stranger, but something in her eyes froze his words. She wasn't asking, she was commanding. Another counselor lunged from the shadows, dagger aimed at John. Before he could react, Illyra's hand shot out. A faint shimmer of blue light pulsed between her fingers. The counselor screamed as an invisible force threw him across the room, slamming him against the wall. John stumbled backward, holding the boy tighter. "Magic," he whispered. Illyra didn't answer. She had already turned to meet the next threat. Her hair was loose now, tumbling around her face, eyes blazing with a combination of fury and focus. Each movement was a dance of death, each breath calculated. John's gaze fell on the child. The boy looked small, fragile, yet there was a spark in his eyes, a stubborn light that refused to be extinguished. John swallowed and nodded to himself. He would protect this child no matter what. The counselors hesitated now. The Queen's fury had shifted the room's energy. They were powerful, yes, but none could match her resolve. One counselor, desperate, drew a hidden blade from beneath his robe and darted toward John. The boy shrieked. John lunged instinctively, placing himself in front of the child. Pain exploded along his side as another counselor struck him. The room spun, but even as his vision blurred, he saw Illyra. She moved like lightning, her sword a blur of silver and sapphire. She knocked two counselors aside with swift, precise strikes. John gasped, You can't keep saving me." She glanced at him, eyes locking with his. There was a moment, brief but heavy, where the world narrowed to just the two of them. A silent understanding passed between them. One wrong move and everything would fall. "You think I will let my son die because someone questions my decisions?" she said, voice low, cutting through the chaos. "I will not hesitate, and neither should you." Another strike, another counselor down. John realized then that this wasn't just a fight, it was a lesson. Every swing, every movement was teaching him something about her, about this palace, about what it meant to survive here. But the counselors weren't finished. They regrouped at the chamber entrance, surrounding them. John's side throbbed with pain, his lungs burned, fear clawed at him. Illyra lowered her sword, turning to him. Her voice was calm, deceptively gentle. "We cannot hold them off forever. You need to move the child now." John nodded, swallowing his pride and pain. He scooped the boy into his arms, cradling him against his chest. The child's small arms wrapped around his neck, refusing to let go. Illyra's eyes softened for a fraction of a second before hardening again. She faced the counselors, standing tall, unyielding. "I warned you," she said. "Any who threaten my child or those who protect him will answer to me. I am the Queen, and I will move first." John felt a surge of something, fear, yes, but also hope. Somehow, against impossible odds, they had survived this long. He glanced at Illyra. There was no hesitation in her stance, no fear, only resolve. And in that moment, John knew one terrifying truth. Staying alive wasn't just about running or hiding. It was about trusting her. The chamber doors groaned under pressure as more footsteps approached. Shadows flickered against the walls. John tightened his hold on the child and whispered, "I guess the real fight is just beginning." Illyra's gaze met his, and for the first time she allowed herself a small, knowing smile. "Good," she said. "Then let's make sure they regret it." Outside, the palace trembled, and the shadow of the High Council loomed closer. Inside, the human and the Queen prepared for war. And the child slept, unaware that his protector had already risked everything, and that the Queen had just begun to move. John stumbled through the corridors, the child clutched tightly against his chest. Every step sent a stab of pain through his side, but he ignored it. He couldn't falter, not now. Not when Illyra was holding the line behind him, turning the palace into a storm of silver and sapphire against their own council. The hall smelled of burned incense and ozone from the residual energy of the Queen's strikes. Shadows twisted across polished marble floors. Servants and soldiers alike had fled, leaving the human and the child alone in the maze of corridors, hunted by those who should have been protectors. "John," the child whispered, tiny voice trembling, Are we safe?" John swallowed hard, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "We're getting there," he murmured. "I promise." He rounded a corner and froze. Figures emerged from the shadows, more council loyalists, faces masked in anger and fear. John's instincts screamed. He braced for impact. Then a flash of silver and sapphire cut through the darkness. Illyra had arrived, moving like a storm incarnate. She didn't speak. She didn't hesitate. Steel sang through the air, cutting through blades, knocking enemies aside with deadly precision. John barely had time to take a breath before she grabbed his arm. "This way," she commanded, voice low but urgent. She led him down a narrow spiral staircase he hadn't noticed before. Pain pulsed in his side. "I am not that fast," he gasped. "You'll manage," she said almost teasingly. "For him." The child clutched John's neck, eyes wide with awe at the Queen's fury. "Mama," he whispered. Illyra's gaze softened for a fraction of a second. "Yes, my son," she said quietly. But there was steel beneath her voice, and the next instant she spun into battle again, pushing their pursuers back with impossible speed. They reached a hidden chamber. The walls glimmered with an ethereal blue light. It was quiet here, almost serene, but the tension in John's chest didn't ease. He set the child down on a soft cot, covering him with blankets. The boy stared at him, small hands gripping his coat. John knelt, brushing a lock of hair from the boy's forehead. "You're safe now, I promise." Illyra entered behind him, closing the door and locking it with a soft chime. She leaned against the frame, catching her breath. Her armor was gone, replaced by the same dark robe from before, but her presence still filled the room, unyielding and powerful. "You saved him," she said simply. John shook his head. "No, we survived because you fought off half the palace." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Do not be modest, human. You could have died a dozen times, and yet you didn't falter. That matters more than you think." John swallowed. He wanted to argue, to say it was nothing, but the weight of her gaze pinned him. I just couldn't let him." "Illyra," the door shook violently. The counselors were relentless. "Open this door, the human cannot remain." She stepped forward, placing herself between John and the door. "He remains," she said, voice unwavering, "because I command it, because I chose it, and because I will not let you touch him or him touch us." John felt something twist inside him. Fear, relief, gratitude, confusion, and something else, something he didn't want to name. "You're risking everything," he said quietly. "I am a queen," she replied, "and a mother. Those are not separate roles, they are one, and anyone who thinks otherwise will learn the cost." The counselors outside screamed and pounded on the door. Their voices were angry, demanding, threatening. John glanced at the Queen. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. John's side throbbed. His breaths came short and shallow. "I don't know if I can fight anymore," he admitted. Her hand brushed his arm, not soft, not gentle, but grounding. "Then fight for this," she said. "Not for me, not for the throne, for him." He looked at the child, curled under the blankets, small and fragile. He swallowed the pain in his chest, straightened his back, and nodded. "I'll do it," he said, "for him." Illyra's eyes softened. A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved her lips. "Good," she whispered. The pounding at the door grew louder. Outside, the shadows were gathering. Inside, the Queen's calm burned like fire, a shield stronger than any wall. John realized something then. He had risked his life once for a child he barely knew. Now he would do it again, not for glory, not for reward, but because survival meant more than breathing. It meant protecting what was precious, no matter the cost. And in that moment, he knew he was no longer a stranger in this palace. He was a guardian. The counselors' voices rose to a roar. The Queen's eyes met his. "Ready?" she asked. John gritted his teeth. Pain flared, but he nodded. She lifted her sword, blue light glinting off the steel. And the door shattered. The door splintered, wood flying in jagged shards, and John felt the shockwave hit him in the chest. The counselors surged inside, faces twisted with fury, weapons drawn, but they froze the instant Illyra stepped forward. She wasn't just a queen now. She was a hurricane in human form, silver armor gleaming even over her robe, sapphire light flickering across her blade, hair loose and wild. Every inch of her radiated authority and danger. John pressed himself against the wall, shielding the child behind him. He couldn't stop watching her. She moved with impossible speed, parrying and striking, her sword slicing through the air with precision that made John's chest ache with awe. Every counselor who tried to advance found themselves thrown backward. either by her steel or by her subtle, almost imperceptible command of the blue energy pulsing through the chamber. "You're not leaving," she said to them, voice cold as ice, yet laced with an emotion John couldn't name. "Not today, not ever." John felt the child's tiny hands clutch his coat, eyes wide and shining. "Mama," the boy whispered. Elira's gaze softened ever so slightly, but only for the child. "Yes, my son," she replied, voice gentle for a heartbeat before it snapped back to steel. She moved again, faster than John could follow. Sparks flew, swords clanged, and each strike was a calculated dance of death. John gritted his teeth. He knew he had to help, or at least survive long enough to protect the boy. He grabbed a fallen staff and swung blindly at the nearest counselor. The man stumbled, giving Elira a split second to strike again, felling 2 more opponents. "John," Elira barked, spinning around him. "Protect him, move." John's muscles burned as he lifted the child and sprinted down a side corridor she had pointed out. Every step was agony, his sides screaming, but the boy's safety mattered more than his pain. Behind them, the sounds of battle, the clashing of steel, shouts, and the low hum of energy pushed him forward. They reached a balcony overlooking the palace courtyard. The night sky stretched endlessly above, stars glittering like distant jewels. John paused, catching his breath, and glanced down. Soldiers loyal to the Queen were already forming a line below, weapons ready. "We can't stay here," John said, voice rough. They won't get him," Elira interrupted sharply, stepping onto the balcony. The blue energy of her presence crackled in the air. "I've moved before, always, and I will move again, trust me." John swallowed hard, but he nodded. Somehow he had no choice but to trust her. She had already risked everything to save his life and the child. The counselors regrouped at the balcony doors, their shadows long and menacing. John felt the weight of them, the centuries of law and tradition pressing down, yet Elira stood unmoved. She raised her sword, and a pulse of energy surged outward, a quiet but undeniable warning. "John," she said softly, leaning close, her breath brushing against his ear. "I will handle them, you get him to safety, understand?" He nodded, heart hammering. I understand." The child stirred in his arms, tiny face pressed against John's chest. John whispered soothingly, "We're okay, we're going to be okay." Elira's eyes met his one last time before she turned toward the approaching counselors. There was something in that look, an unspoken promise, a bond forged in the fire of battle. She would not let them take the child. She would not let John die. She would not fail. And then she moved. Faster than John could follow, her blade flashed, cutting through the ranks of the counselors with breathtaking precision. The night air seemed to bend around her, the blue light of her energy painting the courtyard in a surreal glow. Every strike was final, decisive. Every motion a declaration of power, authority, and unyielding determination. John felt something shift in him as he watched. Fear mingled with awe. Pain mingled with courage. Confusion mingled with a strange warmth in his chest. Somehow, against impossible odds, they had survived. Somehow the Queen, a woman of legend of fire and steel, was fighting not just for her throne, but for him and the child. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and with the child in his arms, began moving down the balcony stairs toward safety. Each step was heavy but purposeful. Every heartbeat was a reminder. Survival was not just about escaping danger. It was about protecting what mattered most. Behind him, the sounds of battle roared louder, and John knew with terrifying clarity that this was far from over. But for the first time since he had arrived in this palace, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Because he wasn't alone. And the Queen, she would not let anything destroy what they had fought to protect. The night was alive with chaos, and the storm had only just begun. The courtyard stretched before them, lit by the soft glow of sapphire lamps and the distant flicker of fires still smoldering from the Queen's battle. John's legs ached, his side burned, and the child in his arms shifted, blinking sleepily at the unfamiliar world around him. "Elira, what now?" John asked, voice hoarse from running, shouting, and pain. The Queen stood at the top of the stairs, sword lowered but still ready, armor glinting in the faint light. Her hair tumbled freely, framing a face that was young yet carved with resolve beyond years. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she scanned the courtyard, every sense alert, every nerve tuned to the rhythm of the palace. "Now," she said finally, voice low but carrying an unshakable authority, "we ensure the child is safe, and then we reshape what must be reshaped." John swallowed hard. His chest tightened as he realized the weight of her words. She wasn't just a queen defending her son. She was a ruler who would defy centuries of law, the High Council, and tradition itself to protect life, to protect them. He looked down at the child, small and trembling in his arms. The boy's fingers clutched his shirt. "Don't let them take me, Mama," he whispered. John's throat tightened. "No one's taking you," he said fiercely, pressing the child closer. "Not while I'm breathing." Illyra descended the steps, moving beside him, her presence a shield stronger than any wall. She reached out, touching John's arm lightly, steadying him, anchoring him amidst the chaos. Her hand lingered for just a moment, long enough to pass courage, strength, and something deeper, something unspoken. Then the first counselor lunged from the shadows. John reacted instantly, swinging the staff he had picked up, but the counselor was fast. He blocked John's swing and struck, pain exploding along John's side. The child cried out, and John's heart surged with fury. Before he could react further, Illyra moved, a swift, fluid motion like water striking rock. Her blade was a blur, catching the counselor's wrist, disarming him instantly. She pressed her hand to his chest, and a quiet hum of energy rippled outward, throwing him back across the courtyard with a force that left him gasping. John stared. "How?" "Enough questions," she said, her gaze sweeping across the remaining counselors. "Leave us, leave this palace, leave our lives." They hesitated. They had never seen a human and a queen together in such unyielding alignment. For a moment, fear overcame arrogance. Slowly, they retreated, disappearing into the shadows, leaving the courtyard empty but echoing with tension. John exhaled, dropping to his knees, chest heaving. The child clung to him, still trembling. We made it," John whispered. Illyra approached, kneeling beside him. She looked at the boy, then at John. Her eyes softened, the fierce edge replaced by something warmer, something almost human. "Because of you," she said quietly. "Because you laid yourself between danger and him, because you didn't hesitate." John shook his head. "I didn't do anything special, he glanced at the child. "I just couldn't let him die." Illyra's hand brushed his cheek gently, startling him. "That is more than enough," she said softly. "It is everything. Courage, compassion, the human spirit proves itself once more." John looked into her eyes, and for the first time he didn't see the queen of a distant, alien world. He saw a woman who had risked everything, who had made impossible choices for the sake of love and duty. And something inside him shifted, a quiet realization that survival wasn't just about breathing, fighting, or hiding. It was about protecting life, about standing firm when the world demanded compromise. The child yawned and nestled into John's chest. He lifted his head, looking at Illyra. "Mama." Illyra smiled, a rare, soft curve of lips. "Yes, my son," she said, voice gentle. "Safe now, always safe." John exhaled slowly, finally allowing himself a moment of relief. He looked at Illyra. "Thank you," he said simply, voice breaking. She shook her head. "No, thank you. You reminded me why we fight. You reminded me what courage looks like outside the palace walls." John felt something warm stir in his chest, a connection he couldn't name but recognized instantly, a bond forged in blood, danger, and trust. The palace lay quiet around them. The fires had dimmed. The shadows had retreated. And for a moment, time itself seemed to pause, honoring the human who had laid himself between danger and a child, and the queen who had moved like lightning to protect them both. John held the boy tighter. Illyra's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. The night sky above stretched endlessly, stars glittering like witnesses to their survival. Somewhere deep in the palace, centuries of law and tradition had been broken. A queen had made her move, and a human had risked everything. Together, they had changed the course of a kingdom. And for John, that night would never be forgotten. The night he became more than a stranger, more than a protector. The night he became legend. The winds shifted outside the palace, carrying a whisper of promise and danger. But inside, John, the child, and the queen stood together, unbroken. And the world, for all its chaos, waited.